Good Friday morning to you. This is Adam coming to you from the Friday Hangout. And I say, usually we start at 11-ish, and we're almost on time. 7 minutes off isn't a big thing. Today is Friday, and I wish I remembered what the date was. It's some date in August, and we're going to have an incredible show. The topic of today's show is measuring the effectiveness of content marketing. And today we have an awesome guest. We have the COO of GinzaMetrics and an actual friend as well, Erin. I want to say Erin Robbins O'Brien. Which is the best way to say the full name there?
That's the correct name.
That's the correct name. Okay, I've known Erin since before that last name, and so I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it there. And then, and we'll loop back around with the Erin in just a second, so we can learn a little bit more before we dive into our topic. But I've got my cohorts, as Steve calls it, the cohorts, which although I think he means it endearingly, is just basically him mispronouncing a word. We have Steve Farnsworth. How are you doing, Steve?
A little more humble now, Adam. Thanks.
Awesome. I did my job, taking him down a notch. And Janet Fouts, how you doing, Janet?
I'm fabulous, and thank God it's Friday because it has been a weird week.
It has been a weird week, a weird few weeks. Yeah, it's been echoed by a few folks. And what better way to cap off a weird week than to include Erin on the show? Erin, tell us what you guys do over at GinzaMetrics.
And who the hell you are.
He just told you. I'm the hell Erin Robbins O'Brien, and I have been there for a little while helping develop a marketing, search, and content analytics strategy platform. And basically what that is helping make sure that when people create content to try to be found by their target audience, that they can do that effectively and kind of optimize existing content, figuring out new stuff that they could be creating, identifying new competitors, et cetera, et cetera. And my job entails everything from marketing, advertising, and PR strategy to general business operations and financial management stuff. So that's what I do.
Well, we now know why you fit so well within the topic of today's show, measuring the effectiveness of content marketing. Content marketing, I think we've all agreed, has been something that's been around for quite some time, but it's really been over the last couple of years that the buzzword has reached this, tipping point. In the past it's been real time and social and all this, and I think that over the last probably 12 months or so, that content marketing is the new word, or the new phrase. Today we want to talk a little bit about how to actually measure it and even identifying the process of measuring content marketing. I'd say you guys would also probably all agree that none of these efforts are worth much if we can't measure the return on investment on them, and then in addition to that, how effective they are to our overall goals. So let's just dive in a little bit, Erin. I think one of the things that is often forgotten, and this is often forgotten as well when it comes to social media in general or digital marketing or anything new that comes out, which is to actually start from the beginning and lay the groundwork from the very beginning with not what tools are we going to use or what strategies, but the goals and objectives.
Yeah, let's do a slide share is not a goal.
Yeah, exactly. So what I want everybody to dive in, but Erin, can you speak to that a little bit in regards to people using? We don't want it to be a commercial or anything, but somebody uses a tool like GinzaMetrics or other tools before they even dive into something like that. What is the first thing that they should consider when deciding to say, you know what, we want to put together a content marketing program?
So I think that it sounds super basic, so it's not meant as a patronizing comment, but you have to figure out what is your business goal. And for most people, the goal of business is to make money, right? Because that's what keeps the lights on. Whether you're a nonprofit, B2B, B2C, you've got to have some sort of revenue coming in, and that kind of extrapolates across a lot of different things, right? That's conversions, that's sales, that's all these different creating more user base, whatever that happens to be, right? So from your general business goals, you have to figure out what your department is responsible for in contributing to that goal. Is it building the product? Is it marketing the product? Is it supporting existing users of the product, etc.? from there, your department develops some KPIs that are talking about like what benchmarks do we have in place? Is it user growth? Is it, you know, expanding revenue? Is it taking existing users and turning them into evangelists? Like all these different potential things. And then what you have to do is you have to figure out how content would best support something like that. So therein lies the real like, what is the purpose of the content? And so once you understand what the content's real purpose is, because a lot of times your department will have multiple KPIs. It will be a mixture of creating user growth, maintaining your existing customers, and increasing revenue within that customer base. And so if you have those 3 different goals, then content supports things in 3 different ways. So I think that that's really kind of a good place to start.
I actually think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was just going to comment. One of the things I thought is, yeah, normally, you know, when I work with clients, the goal around our content marketing is demand generation, and you just talked about several that I think are really great ones that people often do it, but they don't really think about it. You talked, I mean, just want to point it out, is like you talked about content marketing can be used for other things internally in the company to achieve departmental goals. And often companies actually, they do content marketing. But, you know, some of the things you were talking about, what is it, like, what were some of the goals you mentioned? I thought they were really good ones. Just, do you remember?
Some of the goals, from what I just said a second ago? Yeah, stuff like, so increasing your user base, increasing kind of audience traffic, increasing revenue, and then growing revenue from existing customers.
And you were also talking about encouraging engagement, bringing other people in. So anyway, I thought it was really good. I'm sorry, Jan.
I mean, I would tie things into that, like, you know, also decreasing certain areas of cost as well, right? I mean, maybe creating a content hub is going to decrease customer support costs, maybe and keep you from having to repeat things over and over and over again that you end up having to do because of not actually having that content readily available to your community or to your customers.
But I think one of the things that people forget is that, okay, they define what those goals are for the content, and, you know, it's not a white paper either. And really, it's kind of deciding, okay, how are we going to think about this in more of a global way than just here's the goal and here's how we're going to get there. You know, like Adam said, how many different ways can we use this and make it part of the ecosystem of the company instead of just saying we're going to create content, we're going to use it to market, and then we're going to measure it. That's really too short-sighted, and it's really hard for people to, you know, come up with something like that that's really going to be effective if it isn't part of the whole picture.
I think marketers get stuck in a rough place sometimes too, because people on the executive team will hear about content marketing, or will see somebody else's, like, let's say, white paper, for instance, and then they come in and they, you know, say, I want a white paper too, or I want to do this too. And then the question has to be back, why do you want that? Do you want it because someone else has it? Because sometimes that is a good reason, right? Like sometimes competitor parity is a perfectly legitimate reason. But if you just want it and you don't know why you want it or how it's actually going to help you reach a goal, then that's always where I want to start, is what's the goal of the white paper? And then let's discuss whether or not the white paper is the most effective way to reach the goal.
Right.
I think that's actually really well said. And actually, frankly, I think if you think about white paper or any of those kinds of things, I think people miss the opportunity of when they go for that big piece, they can actually create a bunch of smaller pieces, planning ahead to have that ultimate piece. By building all those, you have all those individual content assets that you then assemble for this awesome white paper. And I think people miss that all the time. But, you know, can you talk? Let's actually go back to the goals and dig a little deeper. Can you talk about, you know, give a couple examples of goals, typical goals that we just did, and the kind of metrics you would then use to verify that you were achieving that goal? There was an alignment there.
So, I mean, because I usually like to start out with a specific business goal in mind or set of goals, and then the idea would be a campaign or campaigns to try to meet the needs, or, you know, create a logical path to reaching that goal. Then what happens is for every goal, there's a series of, you know, content, marketing tactics, deliverables, etc., that I want to be able to map back. And the way to map that back is to say, okay, who is the target audience for the goal, and what is seeming to work effectively to reach this target audience, or what do we want to try to make sure that we're reaching them effectively. So from that kind of I want to reach them effectively idea, you develop, let's say, content, and then you're like, okay, from this content, what channels am I going to distribute that over? Now, I'm not a huge fan of purely basing things on vanity metrics like, oh, I created a YouTube video and it got 10,000 retweets, it's like, okay, well, whether or not that's actually the case, if at the end of the day I do not sell a single additional user on using GinzaMetrics, then I have a really great Twitter situation, but nothing really happening, right? So is that time I could have used elsewhere? Or could I have picked a better distribution channel? So for me, it's about saying I want to follow through and say, for everybody that viewed this content or downloaded this content or engaged somehow with this, what does that look like when it comes to a conversion? And so everybody defines conversion differently, right? Like for B2C, it may be shopping cart fills on an online e-commerce site, or for B2B, it may be, you know, somebody that converts from a prospect into a marketing qualified lead or a sales qualified lead through lead scoring, right? These are all different conversion points. So if you set that up for each aspect of your campaign, you'll be able to, at a really granular level, understand what's working. A second thing is being able to understand what it is about the content that's working. I think that that's often missing as well. So the idea that, like, yay, this content got a ton of hits, but you don't understand what it is about the content. So, like, let's say it's an ebook. I don't like it when people say ebooks work great for us, so now I'm only going to create ebooks. It may not actually be the ebook. What if it was just that particular topic that really resonated with people? And instead of creating more ebooks, what you should be creating is a slide share about that topic, a video about that topic, a landing page about that topic, right? Like, what if what you should be doing is creating more information about that topic and not just more ebooks?
A little bit now from, you know, the beginning part to once we've set up the different data points, or consider setting up these different data points. I mean, how do we understand? I think you alluded to that with what you just said, Erin. We understanding sort of what to track and not sort of paying attention to just things at a very cursory level and just say, oh, it's an ebook, so everybody likes ebooks. But actually putting a little analysis to it. I've heard folks say, you know, a lot of times when you have data. Well, actually, no, forget that. I want to go on to the dashboard part of it. So now that somebody has set up their goals and you need to have a dashboard put together and ready, whether that dashboard, in my experience, has been sometimes for multiple tools. If one particular tool doesn't do it justice in one particular area. So some tools are really great when it comes to SEO. Some are really great when it comes to social. Some are really great when it comes to advertising. When somebody puts together a tool, what do you think that they should be looking for, Erin? And go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, there are a couple pieces there. I mean, you're talking about using tools. You might use multiple tools to collect data, but a lot of times these dashboards people are using Excel because there aren't tools that pull out all the unique information.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Really, what's going to be inside that dashboard? Is that kind of what you're asking?
In general, how should people? Yeah, exactly. How should people put something like that together, and what should they be looking for? Especially, I think what you were just saying, it depends on what their goal. Everybody's got something different. Everybody is thinking of something different. So is there one sort of silver bullet that just does all that stuff, or are there some decisions that they should be making in order to best get everything going and have a place to look at all that data in one spot?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that in terms of a silver bullet, right, like, God, I can't remember who said it, but Ray and I are really big fans of the statement that there is no silver bullet, there's just a lot of lead ones. And that's particularly true when you're looking at kind of the startup life or any business where, you know, one thing is rarely going to be the explosive factor. It's usually a lot of contributing factors. When it comes to dashboards, because creating the perfect marketing dashboard is, one, incredibly subjective, but also, two, like a really complicated scenario for most people. I'll go with, for the thing that I think is the most important for people, is a full view of how all of your marketing channels are contributing to a campaign. So let's say I set up a campaign and I've got pieces of content, targeted keywords, like an audience that I'm going after, and then I decide to use distribution across email, paid advertising, social media, SEO, all these different tactics, right? If I'm in an organization where I have an email marketing group in one side, a social media in community management team on another, you know, all these different silos, what I never really understand is, even though my metrics may look good or may look okay, I don't really understand what the entire ecosystem looks like and what's working for other groups. For example, sometimes what you'll find out is, especially if you do A/B testing, that a particular subject line in an email has an amazing open rate, right? That's a really great potential title, or obviously a topic that resonates well with a lot of people, and maybe something you should continue to expand on. Likewise, something that may get a ton of retweets, or a particular slide share, or something that gets a lot of views, is something that may be resonating on that channel. But if you don't know what's working kind of across the full spectrum, you have a really difficult time. So for me, a dashboard that allows you at least some top-level insight into the traffic and conversion metrics kind of across the board is really, really important. And it's something that we felt super strongly about and built here and released this year. And I can tell you that it's one of the things that actually made me log into my own platform on a more frequent basis than I had been.
Cool. Well, that's something that, I think as you look at that data and you excuse me, you kind of aggregate all of that data and the information that you're gaining from it, then you can do that second level push. For me, content marketing is an iterative process, right? You put it out, you see what's working, you say, okay, it's working in this email, now we can do a blog post, or maybe that's something that we want to follow up with. So you take those metrics and there's kind of a waterfall effect, right? So how do we do that? How do we map that out? Is it a mind mapping process? Do you end up with Gantt charts everywhere? How do you get that flow set up so that the whole team, the whole company perhaps understands how the content marketing is growing and developing and nurture that?
I mean, I think that there's a couple of different ways, really. I mean, so luckily, I don't have to tackle this problem because I have a tool that allows me to do it, right? And that's been extremely helpful, right? And it's beyond just looking at kind of the base level metrics, which I think should be shared across all marketing departments. But being able to drill down and understand what specifically about those things is working really well. So let's say that I look at a chart that says social is driving 38% of my traffic for this particular campaign. If I don't understand, social media has a lot of channels, right? So if I don't understand what particular channel within social media is actually driving most of that traffic, then maybe I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to throw a bunch more time into social in general, but that's a huge category of stuff. So right now, it's great to be able to drill down and say, okay, actually for this one, maybe Vine or YouTube or Instagram or something is working really well. So I'm going to maximize visual content for a little while because that seems to be resonating with the audience. For folks that don't have that, I used to use kind of a Google spreadsheet / Excel type document that really outlines, for each thing a lot of metrics. And maybe what I'll do is maybe I'll make a Google Doc and then I'll just share kind of that example spreadsheet and let everybody kind of pick that apart and see if they can apply it to their own stuff.
So one of the things I think it's worth noting about analytics, and I'm a big fan of putting analytics in, but I also know that there's a lot of data that shows this true. When you just have positive feedback loop, when you're just pursuing those things, eventually it becomes out of sync. So while you should be looking at your analytics, what's working, you should be having some random stuff. You should be testing new ideas, bringing new things in, because what happens, I think a lot of people is they go so far, they just start producing things that show results, and sometimes it starts not really returning their goal. But looking at goal metrics, Erin, what are some uncommon, we talked about some of the common goals that people looked at. What are some uncommon metrics that they might want to look at to see how the health of their content marketing?
I think looking at kind of overall share of voice in the marketplace is really important and often overlooked from a content perspective. Usually if you're driving really good or creating really good content that's resonating with the right folks, if you look at a cross-section of your industry and who's got a lot of share of voice amongst your competitors, that's a good barometer of how often people are paying attention to you.
Are you talking about share of mention, like how many times you're mentioned to your competitor? Are you talking about true share of voice? Issues that are relevant to your product and mentions within that issue?
I think both. I think that there's kind of like the meta and then the more granular level. And we're talking about things that are uncommon metrics, like outside of the normal stuff, like did you actually drive revenue or did revenue change based on this campaign? I harp on it all the time, and it's because I don't see any change for a lot of people, which is your campaign could have amazing traffic numbers and your company not sell a single additional product, right? And that means your campaign failed. You can't look at traffic numbers alone. It's gotta result in increased revenue, or whatever it is, most of the time revenue. Because at the end of the day, when it gets all the way up to the top, and your board of directors or your investors or somebody is looking at this, and they're going to say, well, like, that's fantastic. Way to get 1 million, way to get 1 million new eyeballs, but like not a single one of these people bought it. So then you've got this idea of either you weren't using the right messaging, you weren't talking to the right audience. Like there's myriad different problems. So I think that share of voice is one of the things that people aren't looking at often enough.
Well, on the other side too, there's the CEOs and other folks that really enjoy seeing how many likes they have on their pages and so on, and don't quite themselves, I would say, understand how to tie that back to whether it's a meaningful metric or not. So I think on both accounts, being able to drive it towards something meaningful for your bottom line, or whatever that initial goal was, is an important thing to do. Steve, did you have another question?
Yeah, actually I did. I mean, whatever her name is, Erin. Erin and I had actually had a little bit of an offline conversation, and she had an interesting take. We were talking about content marketing frameworks, and she had a couple thoughts around that, and I was just wondering if you could kind of share some of those.
Yes, I mean, a content marketing framework is something that allows you this like closed-looped process that says, from kind of inception of the original goal to how you're going to create content against that and what channels you're going to distribute, and then measuring, it also allows other groups within your organization to give you feedback as well, right? So a good example would be marketing taking and driving a lot of prospects to marketing qualified leads, and then to sales qualified leads and handing them off, right? And this is a much more like enterprise focused situation, but when you do that, what you really also need is the ability of sales to come back and give you information on what it is that's working and not working. Like, what kind of questions and feedbacks are they seeing as a result of this content that you've created? Because a lot of times people will read a case study or a white paper, and it'll spark something during a follow-up sales conversation. Same thing with customer success and customer support, as well as community management, right? Like, they're seeing and hearing a lot of topics, and a lot of things are coming up. Those are great things to build content around, but also you need to arm them with the answers for when they're going to hear stuff coming back from the content that you just created, because then people are going to ping them. So you've got to create this kind of closed loop system that allows everybody to maximize the content efforts that you're creating.
So, Erin, Steve, did you want to follow up on that?
But yeah, I just had because part of what you were talking about for everybody is like, marketers, we have the attention span of 4-year-olds with ADD after eating a Snickers bar, and so
that's an attractive picture.
I know, right? And so part of the issue is like what you're really talking about, Erin. I didn't hear you use the words, but you're talking about operationalizing basically an effective marketing part. So once we do something and it works, we can recreate that process so we can keep doing it. That's what fundamentally you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, so it's about recreating a process, not becoming plug-and-play marketers, but becoming people who have a way to take an idea, launch it, optimize on it, report it, gain feedback, and kind of continue this loop of smart marketing ideas.
And ultimately, you're measuring all of this. That's why there are a couple pieces of this. So you're measuring this to make sure that it happens, right?
Yeah, I mean, hence the other like big word of the year, big data, right? Which sucks because most people don't really understand what that means. But understanding, data from across a number of platforms, and it means that even if you don't necessarily understand kind of how to create all that and do it, that it means that there might be somebody in your organization that does, and you should try to team up with the people on your analytics team, on a BI team, kind of anybody who's responsible for numbers across different facets of the organization should be able to help you provide insight into how to make things better.
Well, that's this is like I was saying before we started recording. It's a conversation that I wanted to be a part of, even if it meant just being a spectator here, because there's always some good stuff that comes out of what's going on in the content marketing, and having Erin talk. And every time, even as a friend, every time I talk with Erin, I'm surprised as just all the new stuff that comes from the conversation in comparison to before. It just you know what you're talking about, Erin. That's what I'm saying.
It's just a font of information, Erin. That's why we keep having you back on the show.
we like to think of
Are
it
you guys
as an
gonna hit me
open
up for
sewer.
money afterwards?
Well,
buttering me up because you want a loan?
Well, you know, so to sort of wrap up this particular part of the conversation before we move on to the next segment, I want to say, Erin, where can people look to sort of continue the learning in this regard, specifically in measuring, you know, setting up their goals and measuring and that sort of whole tool set related to that when it comes to content marketing?
You know, there's a lot of places that talk a lot about content marketing, and I think that because it has become such a buzzword, it's become the thing that everybody thinks that they should use for authorship right now, both as link bait or because, you know, opinions are like blankety blank, everybody has one. I would say that regardless of where you look, that you need to try to make sure that instead of just saying like top 5 plugins to use for this, or, you know, the 3 tools that are a must-have, instead of looking at all these top 5, top 10 lists for everything, look for real-world examples of how things actually apply or could apply to your business and your industry. Look for case studies, look for research, and see where you can take best practices and see what will happen. You know, the Content Marketing Institute with Joe is a fun place to check her stuff. I would say that, you know, some research and things are really good out of there. And then I actually like looking at individual industry places. So I love checking out a lot of times what's going on in the PR industry. A lot of times because they've had to undergo so much change themselves, they're becoming kind of quiet internal content powerhouses. So I think that's a good place. And then if anybody ever wants to ask me anything, I'm always up for a chat. Ask Steve. A 10-minute conversation will accidentally turn into an hour, so you'll have to cut me off.
We can't have a 5-minute conversation. We've tried a couple of times. We just end up marketing geeking out. It's really tragic.
Well, so Erin, and I'm gonna loop back around for a little bit more, but where can they find you? And yeah, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter at TexasGirlErin. Beware, it's not for the faint of heart. The picture of me on there is with a giant shotgun, which I will not apologize for. You can find me on Facebook
It's like a grenade launcher.
At Erin Robbins O'Brien. And you can email me at erin@GinzaMetrics.com, and if you contact GinzaMetrics at all and ask for me, somebody there will get a hold of me.
And that's ERIN, Erin, right?
That is true. And if my lower third thing would work, you would be able to see it. But I swear, no matter how much Janet tells me it's my own fault, it's really not.
It's usually
pilot error.
We also have links to Erin's social networks on the website at thefridayhangout.com.
And by the way, okay, so shares. Sorry, my brain is going in a few different directions here. It's my first time hosting in quite some time, so my brain is realigning with the show. Do we have any shares? I have a few things, but you know, Steve, did you have a share this week?
Well, I thought maybe Janet might want to do a share regarding a certain app, real quick.
We have a new app for the Friday Hangout for on Android or on iTunes.
Say it loud and proud, Janet. Say it loud and proud.
Yeah, really.
Shut up.
We haven't.
You can download it on
if you don't really want to see us, we
thefridayhangout.com.
appreciate it.
See, I have the ability to mute Steve. This is my power, folks. Actually, I think I'll just hide him from the broadcast. So we have a app on iTunes and Android, and you can download it from thefridayhangout.com, and it will actually allow you to listen to us as a podcast.
And all the shows will be all in one place, so you don't have to go search for it, any of that sort of thing. Janet still has Steve muted. He's just sitting over there.
No, he did that himself.
So
This is great
that
in a
really your
podcast.
share, Janet? Is there an actual
I
share
didn't
beyond
have a
that?
share this week. I was leaving it to you
I
guys.
was
That's
just
why Steve put me on the spot in the first place.
I just thought you might want to pull your own weight on your own show. But hey, so actually, no. So actually, what I want to say is David Meerman Scott had a post today about marketing blogs, about blogs, and fundamentally he said, don't call it a blog. Blogs are great for marketing, but take blogs out. And I would concur with that. For the last couple of years, I've actually been encouraging clients not to actually have a blog. I mean, if they want to have a blog for their corporate communication stuff, we're just on Erin right now, and I'm talking. Is it weird? Why don't you move your lips, Erin, so it's not... Janet, did you change something? I bet you did. That's lovely.
I just see you, Steve, and now I see me. So there you go. It's
anyway.
just that you're so fixated on Erin, you know.
I guess maybe this is my power. So anyway, but the reality is I've been encouraging clients to actually split to create a blog that just has their corporate communications news. Those are those news releases. Those are those product announcements. Those are those updates. Those kinds of things. And I think that should be what you do. But if you're going to do thought leadership, if you're going to do content marketing, create a blog that doesn't say blog, doesn't have the BLOG word anywhere visible. You need to decide what that portal is going to be. Is it going to be a knowledge hub? Is it going to be a knowledge center? Is it going to be a news center? You can call it Joe, whatever you want to call it. Just don't call it a blog, and make that thing a media publication. Everybody's a media company. Be a media company now. And I'm just saying, I think that's I'll go that much further. So we'll post that David Meerman thing, but that's... I think it's time to kill your blog.
That's spot on, and kill your blog in the sense that which you said, right? At first, I was like, "Oh, wait, what? Huh?" And then,
split it.
Have
one for your corporate communication sewer information flotsam, and the other for your real content marketing that's dedicated to engaging your customers on the things that they want to talk about. They don't really care you got a new VP of marketing. They don't. They really, really don't.
Yep, totally agree. Totally agree. Any thoughts on that, Erin and Janet?
Yep.
Man, bitter is the new black today. I actually totally agree. I like the idea of keeping kind of corporate announcements and news and like product announcements and things separate, and then real trend pieces and things that are relevant in another place creates kind of a better experience, and then people actually really know where to go for specific things and aren't stuck using the search bar as often. So
if you have a search bar, which so many don't,
we're not even gonna.
Why do you want them to find your content? Really? I mean, come on.
I often find the approach for us, for instance, when we're helping folks design, their sites or their blogs and that sort of thing, is to actually just take whatever CMS that they're using, which is commonly usually WordPress, and just take certain categories in general and just put them into their appropriate place elsewhere. So something that's press or news, shuffle that directly into the press or news section of your website and have that content dynamically pulled to the areas that make sense for people who are interested in that stuff, but exclude it from, like Steve said, the main blog, which is meant to be of value to your customers and provide things that are useful for them. So I think we're all in agreement there. And I do hate the blog word. I hate it, to be honest, a little bit as much as the word social media nowadays. And content marketing is getting there. Not what it is, but just hearing it so much. It's just being in the industry, I guess. So Janet, do you really not have anything?
I was kind of hoping you did, Adam.
Well, I do have something. I mean, I do have a few things, not as normally poignant as what Steve or you usually share. I'm always interested to learn about the new ad units that are coming out from any of these different social networks, and I say that because in the past, everybody was saying, well, how are these social networks, A, going to sustain themselves by actually making money, and then B, how do they become a marketing tool for those who don't really want to engage as much as pay, again, to do sort of basically for advertising. And so there's some interesting things that I found in this week. LinkedIn has just released something new, a new ad unit that I think people should be aware of. There are right now there are a few different ad units, but the easiest ones to get up and running are the text ads that they have, and then their sponsored content ads, their sponsored update ads. So if you're on a company page, you can post something in there and then pay for it to be essentially amplified in the same way that you might see an ad amplified or a post actually specifically amplified on Facebook. And in the past, if you wanted to put an update out there, and by the way, the sponsored updates not only feel a bit more authentic for folks, but they actually do get quite a bit of engagement in comparison to the other standard ads. LinkedIn recently, the only sort of downside of it is that if you did something that was a little bit like an ad, or you wanted to put an asset out there like a white paper or something, it had to be posted to your company page. And so sometimes you want to experiment without actually posting something to your company page, but still making it look like sponsored content. And so LinkedIn has produced an ad unit, essentially, or a sponsored content unit called Direct Sponsored Content, or Direct Sponsored Updates, which is basically a sponsored update. It's the same form. It shows up in the feed, but it doesn't actually get posted onto your company page. So if you wanted to try out 3 of those, A/B test them like Erin said, you could do that without actually filling up your... These guys are distracting me. They're talking and talking away in the chat room over here, and nobody else can see it. I don't even know what they're saying. I just see them all laughing and giggling and things. It's like a little Wall Street ticker off to the right.
Try to focus, Adam.
I know, I'm trying. I'm having a hard enough time without this. So bottom line is the direct sponsored content updates, or sponsored updates on LinkedIn, allows you to A/B test multiple versions of a similar update all at once without having them all just pile up in your company page. And I think that that's an interesting thing. We're actually doing it with one of our clients currently. It's allowing us to, the client in particular doesn't really have a lot of content on their update, on their company page, excuse me, and so to do this would be a bit awkward and wouldn't really be the most ideal thing. But because we can take these sort of content pieces out of the flow of their page and still have them out there in the main feed, we're seeing probably 3 times the engagement on ads or on those particular units than we did on, say, text ads that we're doing as well.
I think it's a much better delivery mechanism than the old way of doing it, where it was just promoting posts. And I think they basically took it from Facebook, because when you create an ad on Facebook, instead of promoting a post, you can target multiple ads to the same people, and it's much better targeting. So we do both, but I like this. I think it's a good move.
Now, your work with Desmond Tutu, did you try any of those, like any of the promoted tweets, and did you have?
We did promoted posts on Facebook in particular. We did some on Twitter. We didn't do any on LinkedIn.
What was your response on Twitter and Facebook?
It was really great on Facebook. You can very carefully target, and so we got really good responses. But I'm doing some for a university in the East Coast right now, and we're doing a combination of all 3. And we may do some Twitter video ads too, which is going to be a really nice new introduction.
I just we should probably do a whole show. I mean, we have Frank Strong coming up in a week, I guess, maybe next week, after talking about paid, earned, to own. But I think we could do an entire show just on the advertising options, because they're just, I think people need to embrace them and learn them, and there's a kind of a wealth of information right here, especially with the hands-on stuff that both you and Adam are doing.
Yeah, we should do that.
And I think actually it's a hot topic, considering the fact that now we're heading into the age where everybody is starting to finally I don't know if they feel comfortable yet, but they're starting to realize that you've got to pay to play no matter where it is, whether it's Facebook or elsewhere.
Well, that's kind of what Facebook's saying, for sure.
Yeah, and because this is a share and it's not a broader topic, I won't go into it, but there's some actually really interesting things happening between some new stuff Twitter is doing, between Facebook and Instagram, and the potential direction that'll go, remarketing across all these channels. So yeah, it's an important topic.
Yeah, the remarketing is, you already could do remarketing on Facebook, but now they're making it easy for everybody, and so that's kind of interesting.
And on Twitter you can do remarketing, and so on and so on. Yeah. All right, so I forgot that I was the one to close the show, unless there's somebody else with a share. Erin, do you have something interesting that you think we should pay attention to, some story or something like that?
Only just something that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is this idea of like, what are your goals and what are you measuring? There was research kind of posted by Content Marketing Institute, I guess maybe it was about a week ago, talking about really what a bunch of different content statistics, and it's the result of a survey that they did of marketers. And one of the things I thought was kind of alarming was the goals, people's goals for content marketing. and what they're measured against as like key metrics are two completely different things. For example, on goals, website traffic is near the bottom of the list, but website traffic is the #1 metric that people are measured against in regards to whether or not their content marketing was effective. So this kind of just goes back and really points to the fact that we're still a long way away from figuring out what this means. And I think that because people keep using this word, content marketing, content marketing, content marketing, there needs to be a better understanding, as with big data, as to what that means. We need to talk to people who really have a real understanding of it and can kind of lead the charge in creating some good process and helping out. And we need to start understanding kind of as an industry how to measure effectively and how to create a better process to make this work. Because when our goals and our metrics are so far out of sync, that's not too far from trouble when it comes into like how this actually continues to affect both businesses and people's individual departments and responsibilities.
So something to keep in mind too, Erin, is that you are contributing to the education of that. You guys have a show, don't you? How often is that show on?
It's weekly. It's Found Fridays, and I skipped it this week to join you guys.
Ooh.
So
Found Fridays,
special.
And that's normally
No.
do they go directly directly to the GinzaMetrics website in order to jump on that?
Yep, you can find us there, and we also post about it every week on social, and we write a blog post to kind of announce it and send it out, and then you can watch it live directly from the blog feed when Google Hangouts is not being hideous.
Awesome. Erin, thank you very much for joining us. You are welcome anytime to come on over and join us, whether it's as a guest or as a cohort, as Steve again would say. We gotta copyright that. So it's time to wrap up the show, as I've been being screamed at by Janet on the side. I guess she's got a lunch date or something. I don't know what's going on over there, but
We should probably talk about that.
So much distraction.
Wrap it up.
So much distraction in the chat room. So
We love your faces. Catch us on iHeartRadio.
yeah, you can catch us on
the Friday Hangout. Come back next week. We love your faces. Janet, where can they find you?
Anywhere you want to.
Jay Fouts. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, Steve?
Secret Sushi on Twitter. Secret Sushi the blog. The man, the myth. And I'm Steveology for the Steveology Group.
Until next Friday, you guys, it's the Friday Hangout. Thanks for joining us, and take care.
Bye,
Take care,
everyone.
everybody.